Teddy Roosevelt was crazy, right? He was insane. I watched a video about him. Craziest president US has ever had. What? I'm getting the vibe that there's even crazier president. I feel it in the air. His name is Andrew Jackson. And you guys are going crazy telling me about it. Watch Andrew Jackson. Teddy Roosevelt has nothing on Andrew Jackson. Chuck Norris is like Andrew Jackson. We're gonna find out who the hell is this Andrew Jackson today. But before we continue, simmer down now. I'm gonna tell you a story. Cue the Finlandia. In the 1940s, there was a man in Finland making reindeer leather watch straps. Yes, you heard me, reindeer leather watch straps. What? He had a special technique. These were really old school quality watch straps and watches. But time went by and the technique was forgotten. Nobody made watch straps anymore. Everything was made by machines nowadays. 21st century arrived and no one even cared. But then, the old dusty workshop was revived by Rohje. What is Rohje? Rohje is a Finnish company. Rohje comes from the word rohjetta, a Finnish word that means to be brave, to dare, to venture. And they make watches. They make exactly the watches that I love. I wear watches like that. Their watches have reindeer leather straps. Their watches are part of the Arctic heritage, the Nordic culture. Reindeer leather is really soft and it's really high quality. I mean, look at their homepage, it's amazing. I love this simplistic Nordic style. It's, if you would see my room, everything is so simple. There's nothing excessive in my room. I like my watches exactly like that. My clothing and my cars also. And this Rohje page is amazing. Look how simple this page is. It's amazing. If I would have to pick a watch from this page, I would pick the black watch with the brown reindeer leather straps. Rohje uses this old technique to make these straps, the same instruments that were used in the 40s, and they bring this old school quality of things. Back then they made watches to last. They bring it into the nowadays modernized and innovative world and you get this perfect combo. I suggest you go and get yourself this watch. I'm definitely going to get one, and in the next video you will see me wearing this watch, I promise. I freaking love these watches. I want one, I'll get one. In the next one, the watch will be on my hand. I suggest you get one of these watches also to be part of the Arctic Nordic culture. All of the links are in the description below. How often can you wear something made in Finland? Never. The only thing you know about Finland is sauna. Well, now you have a watch also. I'll have it in the next video. Will you? Who's this Andrew Jackson dude? We're gonna dive in right now, I wanna know. In the middle of the video I will update you on the Estonian Youtuber Cup competition. We have some new competitors and we have an underdog who has gone into the competition and boom, beat everything out of the competition. You will find out who he is and what state he is from, but things have changed.
President Andrew Jackson has a complicated legacy. On the one hand, he was a populist hero and a venerated war general. On the other hand, he was a slaving genocidal maniac who drove the economy into the ground like a meteor shower. Today we're talking about
slaving genocidal maniac, woo, yeah.
Old Hickory, President Andrew Jackson. Before he was a politician, Andrew Jackson was a military officer. And during the War of 1812, Jackson was shot in the arm. The cure for bullet arm in those days was to chop off the whole thing and throw it in the nearest trash can. But Jackson wasn't having that. Jackson sought out a more holistic solution among the Cherokee, and it worked. And with that, Andrew Jackson went on to protect the people who generously saved his arm beneath the presidential mantle, providing them with civil rights under the law and ushering in an age of peace, harmony, and culture.
Yeah, woohoo! I love it! I always wanted to hear that the first president, the first video from Americans that I hear something good about the natives. Woo! Yes! I'm so glad about the Cherokee.
Just kidding. Instead, 1 year into his presidency, Jackson authored one of the most twisted moments in American history. He signed the 1830 Indian Removal Act, which made it okay, legally, for the government to snatch native territories and herd residents westward into a new Indian colonization zone, which is government speak for internment camp.
I'm very disappointed. I'm very disappointed and hurt right now.
CZ was distinct from the U.S., so its people enjoyed no protection under the law. That zone is now called Oklahoma, home of Garth Brooks. Now, under this act, the U.S. Army supposedly couldn't force indigenous peoples to hand their lands over, but the U.S. Army has never been good at not stealing from Native Americans. much like Andrew Jackson. The first tribe to follow the trail, some double-marched in literal chains as if armed escort wasn't enough, were the Choctaw, one of the 5 civilized tribes who adopted European customs to make their twitchy American neighbors less uncomfortable and still lost their homes.
Oh no, I thought this was gonna be a fun video. It's gonna be like a genocidal and bad slavery video. I don't want... Damn it. Sad and bad and horrible. I want to see some fun stuff now. Please, Andrew Jackson, do something that I would cheer about.
The Supreme Court actually found that the state had no authority to pull this nonsense, but Jackson didn't let that bother him. The forced march, made without food or supplies, claimed 4,000 lives. All told, over 70,000 Native Americans would be uprooted from their homes and driven westward to diminish...
4,000 of people just died because they marched. We're talking about first world civilized powers here, and why do they do this? Why? No, bad. I want to skip this video. I want to skip to the end. Maybe something better happens, but I have to watch it.
And die. Jackson was a man of many monikers. Political opponents called him King Mob for his ability to rile the electorate into a frothing ball of violence, and his election campaign was based largely in his being an experienced Indian fighter, a career that earned him the name Sharp Knife among the Cherokee he routinely slaughtered. Yeah, it wasn't a positive nickname. After bitter fighting during the Creek War, Jackson oversaw the Creek tribe's terms of surrender. The terms were brutal. The Creek people had to surrender about 23 million acres of their land, which encompassed more than half of present-day Alabama and part of Georgia, to the federal government. And then we had the Seminole War, the left sock of America's dirty laundry. Before Jackson got involved, Florida belonged to Spain and was home to a coalition of former slaves and Seminole...
Oh, this video is about this America's dark side. Wouldn't have even guessed. I thought it's gonna be like a fun video like Teddy Roosevelt's video, but this is... I'm seeing all the bad stuff that America has done to itself in the past. Yeah, I'm watching America's dirty laundry right now. I see everything what happens behind the scenes. Damn, this is crazy.
Indians, an alliance that freaked Southerners out so much that they routinely sent armed posses of kidnappers over the border. Under secret orders, Jackson sent the U.S. Army into the Sunshine State, aiming to take it by right of conquest and crush the Indians and former slaves there. He ordered his men to raise crops, abduct women and children, and deploy attack dogs. After the war, he proudly wrote to his wife, "I think I may say that the Indian War is at an end for the present. The enemy is scattered over the whole face of the earth, and at least one half must starve and die with disease." Good job?
You write that to your wife? Do you say "I love you" in the end of that letter? Like half of the Indians are starving. "I love you, baby." This is how romantics worked 200 years ago.
The official website for the Hermitage, a museum based at Jackson's Tennessee plantation estate, states, "In all reality, slavery was the source of Andrew Jackson's wealth." And that's in his museum. Jackson owned 161 slaves at the time of his death. And while all previous presidents had slaves, Jackson had a few fingers in the human trafficking pie. He made his living in the domestic slave trade, which for him spanned from Virginia to New Orleans. When one of Jackson's slaves succeeded in a brave bid for freedom, Jackson...
He looks like a damn devil. Look at him. He could play the Satan in just a Hollywood movie. Look, he's not a man. Teddy Roosevelt is an awesome dude. This is a devil. Bad Jackson.
For a $50 reward and $10 extra for every 100 lashes a person will give to the amount of 300. In 1821, he instructed his nephew to lash a woman called Betty should she continue putting on some airs. The fatal stabbing of a runaway slave named Gilbert supposedly humanized his approach, but he would continue to peddle flesh until his death in 1845. In 1806, attorney and famed duelist Charles Dickinson called the future president a coward and equivocator, and his wife a bigamist, over a horse racing argument. Jackson and his wife were...
So you're arguing about a horse racing, which horse is faster, and then you call you insult somebody's wife and the president. How big was horse racing back then that people would do this? And people would die over this? What the hell? Do people do this now over horse racing? I think they would do this now over football, like the football hooligans would do this.
Technically bigamist, by the way. When he married her, she was already someone else's wife. A butthurt Jackson, never one to take a high road when his manhood was threatened, challenged Dickinson to a duel. Dickinson, an expert marksman, shot first and hit Jackson in the chest, shattering 2 of his ribs, and then, for his next act of manly chutzpah, remained where honor required him to stand, 24 feet from the wounded Jackson, who still had to take his shot if he could. Ironically, this took so long that Jackson's honor was impugned anyway. but he eventually managed to pull himself together enough to get off a fatal shot at his defamer. Jackson would go on to engage in over 100 duels over the course of his life.
100 duels! All this man does is whip slaves and do duels. How do you have time to run the country? Crazy man. Crazy mofo. Whoa.
Nearly dying of a ruptured artery after he tried to horsewhip a man who would one day become one of his top allies in the Senate, because that's how he rolled. Andrew Jackson loathed the Bank of the United States. His actions against the bank would plunge the country into a nationwide economic depression. In 1832, Jackson shut down the Bank of the United States, opting instead to keep the nation's money in an under-regulated pet bank, which loaned money to just about anyone who came asking. As any competent economist could have told him, this led to inflation. Then Jackson had another on-brand idea. Stop letting people buy land with paper money. He just didn't trust it, which no longer surprises us at this point.
What the? I think he's mentally ill. How can a president do these things? If Donald Trump would right now want to say, I will shut the banks down and give loans to everybody, I don't think he can do that. Back then, I think the presidential power was different, right? Because nowadays, no president could do that. Except for Vladimir Putin, he could, because he's a damn dictator.
Species Circular, issued by Jackson on July 11, 1836, decreed that land could only be bought with gold or silver. Fairly naturally, this law slowed land speculation to a crawl, which led to decreased revenue for the states, which led in turn to the Panic of 1837. Near the end of the War of 1812, General Jackson arrived in New Orleans to find the city in disarray. Taking immediate command of the situation, Jackson put the city under martial law until the war was over, or so he said. He wouldn't actually lift the ban until months after the fighting had stopped. When a Louisiana state senator wrote of his apprehension at the idea of an open-ended martial law, Jackson had the senator arrested. Then, when one of those pesky district court judges demanded that the senator be charged or released in keeping with the Constitution of the United States, Jackson not only refused to do so, he ordered the judge jailed and then kicked him out of New Orleans forever.
He's a damn devil! Oh, I'm getting goosebumps! Who is this dude? You were right, my friends, you were right. Teddy Roosevelt cannot be compared with this dude. Teddy Roosevelt, I felt like had a better heart. This is a devil. How can a devil be a president of America? Maybe, as I said before, he's a perfect president of America. Now we will watch what will happen in the Estonian Youtuber Cup competition. We're back at the Hall of Fame. Cue the music of the gods. This competition will last until 1st of June, so we have a few months. But what will happen to the winners of the competition? First 3 states, I will make an elaborate history video about those states. I will talk about the history, main people, main events that has happened. So if you want me to make a video about your state, this is a way to win this competition. First 3 get the history videos. 2 videos ago there was this name, Hannah Price, who ordered a cup. I didn't know if she was a girl because no girls order my cup. But boom, she is a woman. Look at this photo. She's totally a woman. Really cool, Hannah. Good job. I'm not sure if you're the daughter of Captain Price from Call of Duty. If you are, that's really cool also. But thank you for getting the cup. We got Daniel Gilliam. Estonians would say Gilliam, which is weird. Americans say G, we say G. Gilliam. Wisconsin. That's the 3rd for Wisconsin. We have Hector Luna. Hector is such a cool name, I love it. Hector. I know in Old Greek the names Hector was one of the names. Like one of the heroes, Hector. We have a Greek hero, Hector Luna. I must have an allergy for Hector. California. We have Geoff Lamb. Geoff seems like a French name. Geoff Lamb. I don't know what the French do with their names. 2 F's in the end of the name. Lamb. That also goes to California. 4 already. Jordan Camacho. Camacho is definitely a native name. Camacho, yeah. I could make a song out of that. That's Minnesota. Damn, Minnesota is 6. We have Peter Poraka. Peter Poraka. I'm not sure. I really don't know how to say your names. I'm sorry if I butcher everybody's name. But he ordered from Nevada. There's no Nevada. Let's add it. What's this? I feel Like the earth is quaking, there's some kind of rambling in there. Ooh! A name came through. The underdog who has changed the competition. Philip Engen. Philip ordered from North Dakota, and he ordered 10 cups. What? We have a new leading position. No Texas, no Washington, it's North Dakota with 11 orders. Because last time I had Philip as 1 order, but actually it was 10 orders. You see that, Philip? You made history for your state. As mentioned, first 3 states by 1st of June will get an elaborate history video. So make sure your state wins. North Dakota. Who would have guessed? Surprises me. Haven't even heard about that state until now, until today. But now it's winning.
During his campaign, King Mob promised political positions to his key supporters. Then on the night of his inauguration, office seekers so crowded the White House that it became less a party and more a riot. Instead of ending corruption as his populist message promised, Jackson's administration had been credited with creating a spoils system in which Jackson purged federal employees in favor of those who had supported him. At the start of his presidency, Jackson removed 919 government officials, a full 10% of all government employees, and dismissed 423 postmasters, many
He's a dictator! America has had a dictator in the name of president. He's like Vladimir Putin, basically. Putin does the same thing nowadays. He removes people. Just poof, gone.
long and credible records of service within the first year of his tenure in office. When abolitionist literature began to flood the American South, Andrew Jackson did exactly what a man who had recently established unlimited martial law would do. He banned it. In the mid-1830s, abolitionists started what was probably the first direct mail campaign by sending its unsolicited materials to Southerners' mailboxes. The Southerners did not appreciate this, as their livelihoods depended on them being able to pretend what they were doing was natural. I have read with great sorrow and regret that such men live in our happy country. I might have said monsters, as to be guilty of the attempt to stir up amongst the South the horrors of a servile war. They deserve to atone for this wicked attempt with their lives. The Jackson administration would seek to ban all inflammatory abolitionist material from being delivered by the Postal Service.
Wait, so Jackson, of course he was on the side of keeping the slaves, right? I think he contributed a lot to the hatred between North and South if he acted like that.
Worth noting that it was about this time that Jackson supposedly decided to see to it that his hermitage slaves were treated with more humanity. If you ever read it, abolitionist literature would have informed him of just how pathetically fantastical the mask of the good master he crafted for himself really was. Andrew Jackson had many issues with his first vice president, John Calhoun, and on one occasion he literally threatened to behead him. Jackson and Calhoun disagreed on the nullification crisis, leading Jackson to remark, "John Calhoun, if you secede from my nation, I will secede your head from the rest of your body."
How can you say this as president? What? Even Putin does not say this. Even Xi Jinping from China does not say this. Even Kim Jong-un does not say this. He does it secretly, but Andrew Jackson just said it openly. What? This dude is insane. He's mentally ill. He's the devil. He's a spawn of Satan.
When Jackson agreed with the Supreme Court, like he did when the court sided with him against South Carolina's federal nullification laws, for example, he said it was the country's ultimate power and must be obeyed. Whenever Jackson disagreed with the Supreme Court, though, he got pissy and outright ignored them. In Worcester versus Georgia in 1832, the Supreme Court, led by Chief Justice John Marshall, stated Georgia laws that purported to seize Cherokee lands on which gold had been found violated federal treaties. Jackson, unapologetically set on taking said land and gold, reportedly responded, "John Marshall has made his decision. Now let him enforce it." While historians are unsure if Jackson actually ever said that, they know that both he and the state of Georgia completely ignored the ruling and just stole everything.
Can you run a democratic country like that? Is America doing things like that nowadays also? I don't know. I'm not sure. America is the greatest democracy in the world, right? So are things like that happening nowadays? If you know about those things, you can write them in the comments, because I've heard some stories, but I'm not sure.
Obviously, you're just as shocked as we are that the man who closed the national bank could do something so fiscally irresponsible. When he was 16, Jackson inherited 300 to 400 pounds sterling from his late grandfather. It would be gone within the year, mainly because Old Hickory was as good at gambling as he was at finance. Just ask Charles Dickinson. When King Mob was inaugurated in 1829, massive crowds came to see him. At the time, the White House was open on Inauguration Day, and the first to arrive were Jackson's favorite toadies, most of whom were seeking an audience with the president to discuss the government positions he promised them for making it rain votes all over him. Then came the actual mob. Thousands of supporters guzzled booze, smashed furniture and china, and even mashed cheese into the White House carpets under their boots. We think the cheese was probably already on the floor, but it's not really safe to assume with this man. One fancy society woman wrote, "But what a scene did we witness. The majesty of the people had disappeared, and a rabble, a mob of boys, Negroes, women, children, scrambling, fighting, romping. What a pity. What a pity." Jackson seemed to agree. He escaped out the back window, leaving the White House to the raucous crowd while he went on to whatever lunatics do when they get elected to high office. He eventually used the event as an opportunity to get $50,000 from Congress to redecorate the White House, though. One thing we can definitively say...
$50,000 back then is a huge amount of money. And just for one party you get money from Congress like that. Nice! I should throw a huge party in the Estonian parliament.
About Andrew Jackson, the president, he really knew how to take a bad situation and exploit the shit out of it.
He's crazy, but I mean, he will be remembered because of it. I think he's the president who will never be forgotten. Americans, I'm not sure, but I think he's one of the presidents that you can name. I know this stereotype that most of Americans cannot name very many presidents, but I think Andrew Jackson is one of the names that you will not forget, right? My friends, if you like this channel, become a patron. Why is Patreon important is sometimes YouTube revenue goes down, it goes up and down. Some months are okay on YouTube, but some months are really not okay. And if those months come, Patreon is the one that makes sure the revenue stays the same, you know. It makes up for the lacking of YouTube. So you becoming a patron, that means you directly support me making these videos and you directly want this channel to go on, and I thank you for that. So please become a patron, support the channel. And as always, my friends, until my next video, stay cool and bye bye.